You know, last week I talked a lot about reminding you of something. And I said that I love to be reminded because it means I've already learned whatever it is. And I just am reminded of it without taking any effort from me. Because learning it takes a lot of energy. But being reminded of it is effortless. And I gave you a reminder of those 4 other unity principles that we don't give as much voice to on any given Sunday. And I reminded you that those 5 principles free us. Each of them frees us in their own unique way. They free us from earlier teachings that say we are inherently sinful, to letting us know the truth, that we are inherently good. And really, that's what all of them do, is it frees us from the untruth and allows the truth. It frees us to trust ourselves, to accept responsibility for our life, to co-create the life that we dream of, and to live our truth. You know, truth means that we don't have to work at it. We just live it. We breathe, we move, we have our being. Truth is, capital T, truth is. And I said that a lot of things are. God is, end of sentence. Love is, end of sentence. And today I'm going to tell you that breath is, end of sentence. But I talked a lot last week about love because I told you it's my favorite name for God. And love really is a freedom in itself. It is the freedom from our story. I made several of you kind of giggle when I told you that I love you, and it has nothing to do with you. When I went into the fellowship hall last week after second service, one of the beautiful souls came up to me and said, "I want you to know how much I love you." And I said, "Thank you. I won't take it personally." And truly that is what love with a capital L is all about. It just is. No need to attach anything else to it, even how we care for one another. And I want to tell you that you have reminded me of something in the last several weeks. It came to me as I was driving home last weekend. You remind me that I have more than just a couple of good sermons in me. I'll tell you a little secret. As a traveling minister, I know this is on tape, so I'm going to really watch my words. As a traveling minister, I go to different churches all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to have a different sermon every single week, as if you had your own church. I have a nice, good 3, maybe 4 good, great sermons in my bag. I tweak them a little bit for every congregation. I customize them just enough so that it makes sense. But they're so innate within me at this point that I could do that on Sunday morning. But by the time I reached this platform on July 1st, you had already heard all of them. So my weeks here have been delightful and very long, in that I have had to come up with a new sermon every week as if I had a new church, right? And it has stretched me. You've reminded me that I have more than just 3 good sermons. It is living our truth. Today, I am going to talk about the breath. Thank you for singing about it. Throughout our world culture, breath is looked upon as life, as spirit. And spirit and breath are linked. The root of the word spirit goes back to the word breath. And breath has both physiological and emotional connections. Breathing is certainly proactive, but it's also reactionary, right? With our breathing, we are responding to both physical and emotional things that come into our awareness. We control our breathing to affect our physical and emotional self. You ever been out of breath because you've jogged or gone up the stairs? Or have you been out of breath because something incredible has happened in your life and you just kind of catch yourself all of a sudden not breathing? There's a phenomenal benefit to what we call deep breathing. And when we are in the therapy session, we often, matter of fact, this last year it was interesting, my team of coaches sat down after this past fiscal year and we talked about our cases. We have graphs and pie charts and all of that good stuff, and we got together and asked, what did you talk about mostly? And when I hung my shingle for transformational and grief coaching, I thought we would be talking mostly about grief and spirituality. And 79% of our clients last year came to us for relationship coaching. Interesting. Especially interesting because all of my coaches were single. And they were coming to us for relationship coaching. And we began to ask questions, what came up in those sessions? And the thing that we noticed was that the most often used phrase while sitting with someone on the couch was, take a deep breath, or remember to breathe. We talked, of course, a lot about spirit, a lot about relationship and grief, but we had to remind people all the time to breathe. And, I want you to consider for a moment the practice of meditation. We often tell you to take a deep breath, a deep cleansing breath, as if you needed that reminder, as if we needed to tell you, don't forget to breathe through this. And yet, if you've ever been in a meditation where you've not been reminded, you don't find the rhythm that I talked about. Buddhists have understood this for a millennia. They are the experts. And they practice and teach mindfulness, which is really the practice that begins with the breath. It's so powerful when we bring our attention to the breath, because it brings us into this present now moment. When I say, take a deep breath, and you do, it's all you're doing in that moment. And the present moment is really our point of power. It's our point of power. It is the only place that I believe we can touch the divine within us. And I'm not sure that we can ever experience God fully yesterday or tomorrow, but we can experience God fully in this now moment. I don't know what I even had for breakfast yesterday. I would have to think about it. I have no idea what's happening tomorrow, but I know what's happening right now in this moment. When we talk about breathing deeply, then that's what keeps us in this now moment. Our awareness of our breath moves us deeper and deeper into that moment, into the dwelling of the presence of the Most High. And really what it's doing, the most advantageous benefit of breathing, is that it is the absence of resistance in that moment. We're resisting a lot of things throughout our day. We're resisting the worries and the fears, the concerns, the anxiety, what's going to happen next, what happened yesterday, what's happening in my dysfunctional family, what's happening within my own dysfunctional life. And as we go into that time of deep breathing, of meditation, of prayer, of mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, it keeps us in this moment. And what we're doing is we're just allowing the absence of resistance. Breathing is probably the most natural thing in the world. And it's what I think the body demands of us. It's what the body demands of us. You know, breathing is automatic. It's inherent. It's innate. It just happens. And it's effortless. It's something that we don't have to think about in order to do. It's just happening. And as I said last week, God is, love is. If you are really breathing, breath is. Because it needs nothing else to make it complete. God needs nothing else to make it complete. Love needs nothing else to make it complete. They are complete in their very beingness. Notice that by taking, or rather experiencing, this next breath while you're sitting in your seat, it needs nothing else. And actually nothing else can happen but that breath. Scientifically, we know that universal laws and factors indicate that the breath lives on eternally. Last week we talked about eternalness when we talked about the scripture that says faith, hope, and love. They are eternal, and love is the greatest of these. I'm going to give you a little bit of a chemistry lesson this morning. Do you remember looking at the periodic table? Most of you are already saying no and just bored out of your mind. There was a gas on that was argon. Does that sound familiar to you? If you were in school before the 60s, it was the letter A. It was the easiest one to remember. If it was after the 60s, they changed it and it's AR, argon. And you know me by now, I like to look up words and dissect them a little bit and find the origin. And I went back to the Greek to see where that word came from. And it means lazy, inactive. And it's what we consider the third most common gas in our atmosphere. It's represented in 1% of all of the atoms around you. It's an inert gas. It combines with nothing, and it needs nothing to react with to be. It just is. It's what we call one of the noble gases. There's no chemical reaction, so it doesn't even, when you breathe it in, it doesn't even attach itself to your lungs. It just comes in, does nothing, and goes back out. It's not absorbed into your body at all. And yet, you need it. You have to have it because it is. It makes up 1% of our atmosphere and 2% of most of the other planets. I looked through lots of books to bring this message to you today. Not one of them was the Bible. But I looked through some chemistry books, and I looked into some physicists and astronomers and astrologists. Did I mention my weeks get longer every week I'm here? Here's what I found out that the astronomer Harlow Shapley calculated about argon. As we breathe it in, it just is. But as we exhale, as we let it out, it spreads across the country within a week. And if you're a germaphobe at all, you're not going to like this next bit. Within a year, that same argon atom that you just breathed out will have traveled around the entire Earth, and 15 of the atoms will re-enter into your body this time next year. I'm going to let you wrap your head around that for a moment. The next breath you take contains 400,000 argon atoms that Gandhi breathed. The next breath you take contains 400,000 argon atoms from the conversations at the Last Supper. The next breath you take contains 400,000 argon atoms from JFK, or Noah, or Moses, or Jesus, Marie Antoinette, Hitler, Aristotle, Da Vinci. I could go on and on. You are breathing the very breath of every master teacher that has ever walked this planet. Pretty amazing, isn't it? And a little gross. It's kind of like someone dipping their chip into your guacamole twice, right? Think about the fact that you are breathing every generation that was before you. And in your next breath, every generation that will come after you will breathe the one you just breathed. Last week we talked about eternalness, and the breath is, by all scientific measures, eternal. Its shelf life is 2.5 billion years. That next breath you take. You know, when I started traveling and speaking, I was often introduced as a motivational speaker. And I noticed the uncomfortable feeling I had with that term, motivational speaker. And it's not that it's a bad word. It's just that I have myself sat under motivational speakers. I have, remember, that trainer at the gym that never sees the whites of my eyes, but I've been there once or twice, and he motivates me to do something. What I've noticed is that motivation happens as if we were being pushed. My trainer stands behind me and tells me what to do next. Motivational speakers, or motivation itself, stands behind you and pushes you to keep going, reaching for your goals. Again, nothing wrong with it, but just imagine for a moment what that looks like. Someone standing behind you, pushing you into your next accomplishment, into success. And the thing is, when that's happening, I can't see who's behind me. And so trust isn't there. I can't trust what I can't see. I'm being pushed into this thing that is unknown. But when someone, and it was actually Silent Unity who introduced me for the first time as an inspirational speaker, I noticed the total reverse. Motivation pushes us, but inspiration calls us. Inspiration lives in our future and calls us by name. And I would rather be pulled into something that I could see and know and experience than to be pushed. Think about that word inspiration for a moment. Dr. Wayne Dyer, anyone know him, by the way? He said in his book, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, that the word inspiration, he breaks it down and calls it being in spirit. Being in spirit. And he explains that when we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit. It's as if we have returned to our source for that moment, for that breath. It may last for 20 minutes, 20 seconds, 20 days, but whenever we're there, we're there. And it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to that within us, that Christ nature, as we call it in unity. And we find ourselves in joy. We're content, at least for that moment. This is what his book looks like, and it's a great book. I encourage you to get it, called Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. I want to read you just a quick caption in the book. He says, being in spirit is a direction we take rather than a destination to be reached. Living our life in spirit requires us to determine that direction, and we do so by noticing our thoughts and behaviors. Thoughts that are in spirit reflect a vibrational alignment moving us toward our ultimate calling. And obviously, this is the direction that we would want to take. Once we began to observe our thoughts, we realized that there are many times that we're going in the opposite direction. Does this sound familiar at all? I kind of preached that very sermon a few weeks ago, right? And when we catch ourselves going that opposite direction, we can make a U-turn by attaching to new thoughts. To become inspired on a daily basis, we must be able to quickly identify any thoughts that are moving us away from our source and then shift the direction. We need to bring love to the presence of hatred, as St. Francis advised. Evil, hatred, fear, and even illness soften with love and kindness when we are in spirit. Inspiration is the thought or the idea that reconnects us to that one power and one presence in our life. It moves us more deeply, ceasing our need for the ego. Dr. Wayne Dyer told us many years ago, and he tells us in almost every one of his books, that he likes to think of the ego as ego, edging God out. We have a thought that just edges God out. I like that. Our scripture today was from Job, and it says, "The breath of the Almighty giveth me life." Have you ever been in a situation where you felt as though you couldn't catch your breath? Maybe it was because of fear. Maybe it was because of excitement. That moment your child was born. That moment your grandchild was born. That moment you saw a spider in the bathtub. Whatever the case may be, our breath just kind of goes. I'll tell you a quick story. One day when my breath went, I was privileged to be touring with a couple of movies many years ago, and I was the one who would go and introduce this movie that had yet to be sold. So I would go to film festivals, and we would talk about the movie, we'd show it, and then I would facilitate question and answer times afterwards. And I had with me all the stars and the producers in the movie, and I would introduce them, and it was great fun. And we were premiering this one particular movie at one of the film festivals. And because the director and producer knew Dr. Wayne Dyer, before we were having the premiere, and it was a fancy kind of shindig, we had about 700 people coming to the premiere, and each of them had a gift bag in their seat when they arrived. Beautiful little gifts in their bag. And the producer said to me, "I think I could get Dr. Dyer to donate some books for the gift bag." Great. So one day I'm sitting at my desk and my phone rings and I answer it, and they ask for me and I say hello, and the voice says, "This is Dr. Wayne Dyer." My first response was, "Andre, quit fooling around." My best friend's name is Andre. He said, "Excuse me," and I really could not even imagine that I was talking to one of my mentors, one of the greats. And he said, "This is Dr. Wayne Dyer. I'd like to donate some of my books to your premiere." I didn't go there still. I just kept arguing with Andre. And when he began to tell me that he had 750 books, this particular book had just come out, and he was going to donate it, I lost my breath. First of all, I was talking to one of the greats. Second of all, I had to figure out where to put 750 books, because all I could think about was, how are they going to fit in my hall closet? It's not how it works. He just ships them to wherever we're going. But in the moment, I had lost my mind because I'd lost my breath. I'd lost the ability to breathe. And I'm hardly here to remind you today of your breath or of how to breathe, because, as I said, it just simply happens. Even when we lose it for a moment, it continues. It comes back until it doesn't. And we never had to learn how to do it. It was so innate within us. It's kind of like a blind faith, if you will. We have faith that we will breathe in the next moment. We have faith that we will breathe tomorrow. And yet, in those moments of fear or excitement or emotional upheaval, we often remind ourselves that we do have to breathe. We often have to remind others, take a deep breath. There's a quote that says, "Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but the moments that take our breath away." I've always liked that quote, and I still wonder about it. Because is life really taking our breath away? Or in that moment that it's gone, have we just resisted life? We just resisted something and then forgotten, and then needed to be reminded to breathe again. We talk about life and living each moment breath by breath, and therefore life being lived and we are breathing. But I have to wonder, are we really being breathed by life? The breath of the Almighty giveth me life. The breath of all that is, all of the ancestors, all the generations before you are in your next breath. All the generations that are coming after you are in your next breath. Perhaps rather than taking for granted this involuntary yet inherent breath, we could align more deliberately with it. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness, which unites your body to your thoughts. Whenever your mind becomes scattered, use your breath as the means to take hold of your mind again." Realizing how the breath is our greatest link to this now moment, and understanding how this gas called argon continues over and over and over in each next breath, we realize our connection to not only ourselves, but to everyone before us and everyone after. And with that inherent breath, we can be reconnected with that inherent nature, the very source of the breath. Perhaps it is a blind faith that I talk about when I talk about this breath. But for me, it reminds me of our oneness. Namaste.